Hello, so welcome to one more Avocado release meeting. This is the version 55, the Lobster. I will share my screen right away so we can start going through all the tasks that were completed for this release. Okay, so from bottom to top, as usual, first task completed was tackle all to-do fix me comments about change when 36 RTS is deprecated. It was a card intended to review the code base because we had to keep some compatibility codes in order to support the 36 LTS. 36 LTS version was deprecated, and this card was intended to give us that perspective and go through the code, and we did that. So the card is in done items. Next one, Python 3 review respin Paolo's PR. Actually, by Paolo's PR, we mean a pull request, and by one contributor making a lot of Python 3 porting. And the intention of this card was going through what he proposed and actually convert those in many more pull requests and fixing things around. And Kleber mainly worked on this. Kleber, would you like to comment? Actually, this card and the next one, they are both very important related to Python 3 migration. Maybe you can give a perspective on what's the current status and so on.
Right. So it's been quite a long time since we've been chasing full Python 3 support and compatibility. It's not trivial to maintain the same code base compatible with both versions, but we tried that route, and I think we succeeded. For this release, we intend to advertise and even distribute Python 3 compatibility with a few remarks, so with a few known issues. Translating that to code, I think it gives a better impression of where we're at. So this is the top of my Python 3 branch, which closely maps to the latest pull request that it's out there, which is the 9th batch of changes. And I'm showing that because this is the current status of the skips that we need on Python 3, so the things that we still need to work on, and that includes one test on the multiplex, the varianter YAML to MOOCs. This one test needs some work to get to work on Python 3, and a functional test loader also needs some work. So we are to the point that only 2 tests do not properly work on Python 3, which shows that we hopefully have a good Python 3 coverage. Right now, we're going to advertise kind of a beta status for Avocado on Python 3, but we are going to ship Python 3 packages on pip. So for the next release, we are going to be looking into full complete Python 3 support, and also RPM packages. So as Amador was saying, we went through a good number of changes related to Python 2 and Python 3. And the string Unicode bytes usage was probably one of the widest ones, like that required the most amount of changes. So, yep, that's the current status.
Okay, nice, thank you. So for this release, we are releasing Python 3 so-called beta support. We intend to have feedback on that and improve things if they are to be improved. So the next release, we can declare full Python 3 support right now. If you send a pull request for our GitHub repository, Travis will kick the tests for both Python 2.7 and Python 3. So you can at least have some feedback on the self-test on top of your change. So I think we are on the right path to have it fully supported for the next sprint.
Yes.
Nice, thank you. Next one, create a glib optional plugin. Okay, this one was tackled by me. I have some demonstration. Let me change the window I'm sharing. Okay, the need for glib plugin, it was born from the QEMU use case. In QEMU, they have a lot of unit tests. They are in this test directory, and with these unit tests, if you try to run one of them directly like this, you'll see that many tests are actually contained in the same binary containing the unit test. And if you try to run that unit test with Avocado, I mean, first, if you try to list that the unit test with Avocado, Avocado will discover that unit test is actually a simple test because it's a binary, it's executable, and from Avocado perspective, it represents only one simple test. And running that one simple test with Avocado alone, what you get out of it is one Avocado job executing one test. And if you want to see what happened with the inner test contained in that binary, you have to inspect the Avocado log. So the intention behind of this plugin was to give Avocado the same level of granularity you have when running those tests directly. So to achieve that, you can list now with this plugin in place, it's an optional plugin, so you have to install it separately, either from pip or from RPM package. But you have to be explicit about the loader you are using. There's a new loader called glib. And when using this new loader, then Avocado can actually provide you the same level of granularity. So Avocado will identify all the tests that are contained in that binary. And of course, to run those tests, you just have to change to replace list by run command. And Avocado will execute them one by one with the same level of granularity. So the important thing here is that if you don't specify the loaders, it means that Avocado default file loader will kick in first, will discover the test as a simple test, and will execute it as one test only. So you have to be explicit here. But yeah, that's it from this plugin.
Nice.
Changing windows again. Okay, so back to the Trello board. Next one, loader mux allow to prefix test name by Lukash. Lukash, would you like to demonstrate this one, please?
Yep. So basically, if you know Mux suite, that's a way to specify suite rather than just set of tests. It's executed by Avocado run, and then you provide a YAML file. And let me show you this one, which is quite more complicated. And basically, in the Mux suite, you can define test reference, and then you can define a test resolver class, for example. So in here, this one will use Avocado VT loader instead of the file loader, which is default, and it will resolve those tests. Now this was already there. What's new is this Mux suite test name prefix, which is a special keyword, which is used to prefix the name of the test. So in this example, basically it would prefix the /rpm/functional/ppc64le prefix. Now, why is this important? This is important because, for example, in here later, I run different kinds. I run a PCI64 and I run graphic install and then text install. And I need to differentiate between those two. So basically, effectively, those two contain the very same test. Even like those additional two, they all execute the same tests which are set here. But I changed the loader setting. So for example, here I said that VT-arc will be 64. And here I even say that the VT extra params will be VGA is none, which is the same test, but it uses a different setting. And this is for me to easily distinguish between which execution of the same test was this. And you can see that when I multiplex this, I get a full tree. And you can see that I get a functional PCIe 64, which basically has this reference and then MOOC suite with this name and Avocado VT loader. The same for KVM unit tests. Again, I get the same set of tests. Oh, sorry, this is a KVM unit test, but here for the Git version, I get the same graphical, same set of tests here and here. So the test will be named the same, but there will be a prefix of /git/functional/text, which will tell me, okay, in this case, it's actually slightly different test. So it's like for these reasons, this was introduced, and it's still not completely useful. I mean, it is useful even now, but there are some changes to some loaders because, for example, in this sprint, we modified Avocado VT to be able to, for example, change those extra params are here. And while producing this test, I noticed that we actually need, for example, to change the environment in external runner, which is not yet supported, but probably will come in the following sprints. Any questions? If not, then back to you.
Okay, thanks. So the other than the new key introduced for the YAML loader format, user will also face that key in the variant listing, right? I mean, when the tests are being executed, that MOOC suite name will appear in the beginning of the test name.
Yep.
So we can differentiate between the tests. Okay, nice. That's a great one. Thank you. Okay, functional tests on Python 3 leave directories behind. We noticed that some tests are executed in a Python 3 environment or leaving temporary directories behind. So a pull request was created to address that issue. It was merged, so it's present in this release. Support dumping loading variants to from files. Okay, these request was related to the variant generation because sometimes, I mean, if you have a big YAML file or if you have a different varianter plugin that will use a lot of CPU to generate the variants, this task alone, it can be very compute intensive. And when you run your job in a machine under test, and that job will have to generate all those variants in advance to then execute the test, that computing involved in the variant generation, it's sometimes it's not. You don't intend the machine under test to have that extra compute intensive task. So the intention behind this card is provide a way to generate the variants in advance and then and then only load the variants in the machine where the job will be executed. I have one demonstration about this one as well. Let me switch the windows again. Okay, so I have an example here, which is not very compute intensive, but it serves for the purpose of demonstration. It's the hardware YAML file out of our examples. So if you generate the variants, avocado variants -m, and this file here, this computation involved in generate the variants, it can be avoided if you just JSON, use this option JSON variants dump and some destination file variants.json. So what will happen here is that we will compute the variants, we'll create all the combinations, and we will export that combinations, that variants to this JSON file, JSON serialized file. And with that in place, you can use just this file to execute your job without having to compute the combinations all over again. So to run your job, avocado run, let's say passtest.py, and instead of -m and the YAML file, this would compute everything over again. Instead of using that, you can use the option JSON variants load and then provide that file that you generated. So you can copy this file over to the target machine and then load the file in that machine to execute your job, and you will have the same outcome. Difference here is that the computation to generate the variants will not take place when you are using JSON variants load, because you are actually deserialized. I mean, there's a different computation involved in this task, but it can be way less expensive than the computation to generate the variants. So you are basically loading the serialized variants JSON file here back to the job and having the same outcome out of that. One last important topic here is that when you run your job with the YAML file, with whatever variant or plugin you have, the Avocado job generates automatically that JSON serialized file. So you can find it inside the job results directory, job data variants.json. So this file is auto-generated. It was originally generated for the sake of the replay feature, but you can also use that file as the source of variants to be loaded in your next job. So if we use that one just to demonstrate that as well, JSON variants load and that path, it will work the same way. So that's it for these feature comments.
But it's worth mentioning that for this feature, you don't need the optional plugins you used to produce the original variants.
That's a good point, yeah.
It's useful when you generate it on your source machine, and on your client's machines, you can have just the bare avocado.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.
And like, suppose people are running tests out of a Git tree, they would have much better control on the changes to the variants that will be applied to tests if they stick to, say, a JSON file.
Yes, nice. Thanks, guys. Next one, move dummy loader out of core. it's internal change. Users are not expected to notice that, but it is in place already. Avocado utils kernel references 3.x URL. So our kernel utils was still referencing the previous version of kernel, and now after this change, what's gonna happen is that we are not forcing the version. Actually, we are getting the version out of the provided version, so we will download always the version provided by the user. Next one, declare 36 LTS end of life. There's a mail sent to the mailing list, marking that deprecation for 36 LTS. Now we have only one LTS version supported, which is the 52. And related to that announcement, remove 36 LTS related code, meaning that all the code that we were keeping to support the 36 LTS version was removed. Next item, JSON output, revised test ID name and URL fields. We had in the JSON output format, we had some duplicated fields, and after this change, we will not have the fields called test and URL anymore. So users using that fields, they should actually rely on the ID fields to get the test ID, and that will be the only supported field to contain the test ID. Next card, replace Avocado card dispatcher with a dispatcher factory. This is refactoring internal change. Users, again, are not expected to notice the change, but it is in place already. Drop Trinity example test. In our example test directory, there was this Trinity test, but there is a community maintained test repository called Avocado MISC test, and there is a Trinity test over there, and it's pretty much kept updated, and this one had some issues in the past, so we decided just drop it from the repository. Next card, enable HTTPS on our repository server. The certificates are in place and the HTTPS is already working. So thank you, Kleber, for the effort on having that. Next item, status test do not depend on optional plugins. Again, internal change in the self-test. We have this functional test called test statuses, and this test was depending on the YAML to Mux plugin to generate the different combinations of tests that we were intending to have, but we had some Python 3 compatibility issues, so we dropped this dependency and we created way more extensive tests, but still covering the same test case and not depending on the YAML to Mux plugin. Simple test, good status based on regular expressions. Okay, this is another feature that came up out of the QEMU guys, QEMU project use case. I have some demonstration on this one as well. Okay, so the use case for this one is that, I mean, the original use case and the use case that generated the need of that card and that feature. Of course, when we implement those features, they are expected to be generic enough, but talking about the use case in the QEMU repository, test repository, we'll have the QEMU IO tests. And in this directory, we have actually a number of scripts. They are shell scripts that are executed by this check test runner. So the way to execute those guys is with /check and the test number. And what's going to happen here is that this test runner will create some environment variables and will run the script, will collect the output, and will compare the output with the expected output, named after the test name.out. So if you have, in this example, in this test 004, it's intended to be executed for image format raw, and it's being executed for that image format. It's the default image format for the check runner. There's another test, for example, 036, which will not run for that image format. And that's where the use case was born, because if you try to use Avocado to run those tests, replace this test runner by the Avocado run, of course we have to create these all these environment variables, otherwise tests will not be executed. So to have that in place, I have the parameters.yaml file. Here it contains the same environment variables created by the check test runner. And the last of them is the image format raw. So with this parameters file here, I'm able to run those tests. So Avocado run 036, 004, 036 -m parameters.yaml. So this is what's going to happen. I will execute both of the tests, but as you can see here, both are being reported with the pass status. And that's not really true, because the second one, the 036, it's not being executed because it's not intended, it's not suitable for raw image format. So what this new feature does is it allows you to create a configuration or a new configuration file, or you can edit the main configuration file, but just to keep things modular, I'm creating a new one here in this directory. So the section name is simpletest.status, and I will create here a skip regex. Important thing here is that this is Python regular expression. And here I'm just creating the regular expression that when it happens in the test output, it will set the test status to skip. So putting that all together, what we have is Avocado --config Avocado conf. Let me just use the line below. And then that same test will be considered skip because the configuration, the skip regex key was set to not run, and that string, that exact string is happening in that test output. So when that happens, the test status will be set to skip. We have that for skip, we have that for warn. So you can create the skip regex, you can create the warn regex, and you can also differentiate between the standard output, standard error, or both. You can look for that regex, you can look for it in different outputs, or you can look in both of them. And that's it for this feature. Comments?
Yeah, that's cool and useful. So yeah, thanks for doing that.
Nice, thanks. Okay, getting back to the Trello board. Pass rate in HTML plugin does not include warn pass. Well, in the HTML job result page, we generate out of the test case, out of the Avocado job. We have this information here called stats, and we provide some feedback on the statistics of how many tests pass and what's the pass rate percent. I mean, before this change, it was pass rate. Now it's success rate. We changed the terms. And in this example here, we have one test passing, one cancel, one warn, and one fail. And the new formula to calculate is not the number of passes over the rest of the job number of tests. Now we have pass plus warn over total less cancel less skip. So there's a new formula. So we are excluding skip and cancel from the total and then calculating the success rate as being passed plus warned. So in this case, I had pass plus warn. Cancel is excluded, so it's 2 out of 3. And that means 66.67%. So it's a new calculation. It will affect only this HTML report. It's not propagated anywhere else, but it's a different way to show the information. Comments?
Improvement, so it's a good thing.
Revert Avocado utils process CDN patch. We received that contribution. It went through, but later we noticed that it would cause more issues than benefits, and we decided to revert. So the comments related to that are in the pull request itself. Dockerfile used the new repository to get Avocado. So the Docker file was pointing to the old repository, and now it's using the new one. Next one, check expect on Python 3. Now Travis Python 3 checks enabled for a expect repository.
And overall, there were some general testing by myself and Lukasz, and it seems to be in a good shape.
Nice. And last card for this release, JOS 27. I use bad names, so it does not work. So it was a bug fix. Bug fix was related to allowing that name, which is not representing the actual architecture to work.
Basically, it was inconsistent because all other architectures use the arc name, but on x86 historically we just use 64. So, but both links are valid as far as I know. To avoid, I mean, and in the future the new one will be used, but to not break anything, the current users, both of the images were kept.
Yeah, I was slowly talking about this because at the same time I was thinking about the VM image library, if I did fix it, because we were suffering from the same issue, but yes, I did. So nice one. So that's all we have for this version, the release 59. The manual release test plan is still to be executed. I will start that right after this meeting. For the next version, for the next sprint, we will, of course, tackle what we already have in the work in progress. Let's go quickly through them. Low-hanging fruit link is broken. This is a search in Trello board, which searches for low-hanging fruit cards. It's a good starting point to contribute to the Avocado project, but the fact that the advertised search, it works only for logged in users, and we have just to update the documentation pointing to a search that actually works for any case, whether you are authenticated or not in Trello. Optional plugin should adapt change in executable path. This card, it's actually intended to be tackled for this release. Still, it's a bug, a last minute bug that we noticed because of the changes in the way simple tests are getting the executables to execute. We have to go through the optional plugins that are extending simple test class and see whether they are still working after that change, and if not, we have to fix that before this release. Check if inspectors use PyLint parallel processing. Kleber created a pull request for these. Would you like to comment? I heard some noise.
Yeah, the basic code is there. There were two different implementations. I would say it's mostly done because it's functional, but we just have to get back on that and merge the code on inspector. It's on a different project, so a different repo, so it shouldn't impact this release itself.
Yes. Single data dir get emp dir per interpreter breaks multiple jobs. There's a pull request in place. It flags code review, but I don't think it's intended for this release, so it's still work in progress, but quite advanced point right now. Release minor LTS version. We had a backport for the 52 LTS, and according to our release cycle, every time we have a backport for LTS and it's not urgent, it means that we have to release a new minor LTS version, but not right away. But when we release
at the same time of an Avocado release.
Yeah, thanks. So we have to release a new minor LTS, 52 LTS, to cope with that change, with that backport. Add partial LTS related change to the documentation. It will just include, instead of from 55 to 58, it will be from 55 to 59. So same principle, just increment the documentation so we don't have to go through everything in the next LTS. Picked broken with UTF-16. This is Picked is an external project. We have to take a look, but no news here. Picked packaged it as an RPM. We provided the spec file to create the RPMs, but the missing part here is to actually propose Picked for Fedora or Apple. Next one, Avocado VT, add Avocado and other requirements. There's pull request. It's still work in progress, but it's advancing. And last one, writing to standard output or standard error should not affect the runner. I don't remember what's the current status here, Kleber. I think we are almost done with these, right?
There were two different implementations trying to solve this. To make a long story short, it's not that easily fixable. I think what I'm gonna do, I have spent some time thinking about the process model that we use to execute new tests and how the communication happens. And it looks like we'll benefit from doing a bigger change here, changing the way the Avocado test runner actually communicates to test process. So something probably in the lines of dropping the simple queue that you're using and going to a cleaner communication protocol between the two, and a higher detachment between the test runner and the test process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Thank you. Okay, that's what we have already in work in progress. We have also a number of cards in the sprint backlog. An overview of this next sprint is that we are going to fix most of the issues, or we'll try to fix all the issues that we faced. I'm not sure we will have any big features or big changes in the user-facing behavior or new features as the main selling point for the next release, because we have to focus in making the new version stable, and also we have to work in some parallel projects. But going through quickly what you can expect for this sprint, we have robot has syntax issues under Python 3. Again, external project. We have to have a look if we are going to propose some fixes for the Python 3 syntax errors in robot framework. Enable the warnings in Travis make check. Basically, we have to remove whatever we are excluding from the checks in the inspect check. Deprecate test as src-dir. We have a new way to get the directories, and we have to deprecate this API. We have to check Avocado VT against some broken checks. Obsolete get CPU arc and add two functions instead with consistent returns. We discussed this card. This API get CPU arc is returning consistent results, and the way out to create new APIs with consistent results and then obsolete this one. Defaults to recursive. This is long-term card, basically to drop the need of having the docstring Avocado recursive to make the recursive discovery. Define and improve source of test params. Again, another long-term card that we have to tackle in this sprint. Basically, we have to provide an easy way to give test parameters without depending on optional plugins. This is often called as simple parameters interface. Remove the deprecated test skip support. This test.skip API, it's under deprecation process for some time now, I think for more than 6 months, and we created a card with a due date for the end of the last year to deprecate this API, so it's more than time to do that. Get rid of filter out and filter only options. Again, deprecation, we have different options that better represent this feature. They are MOOCs filter only and MOOCs filter out. So these filter only and filter out options will be deprecated in favor of the most meaningful ones. Avocado virt. The avocado -- show breaks SSH. It's a bug. We're going to fix it, hopefully. And last one, also a bug, non-ASC characters are breaking YAML chunks. There's a reproducer in the description. So hopefully we are going to tackle this one in this sprint as well. And that's it. That's all we have. Comments?
This one was quite a sprint. I think we achieved a lot. And yes, the face of the next sprint is probably going to be more of stabilization and keeping up with the changes that we introduce here. So I think that sums it up.
Yeah, it was also, I mean, this one is being a longer sprint, longer than usual. So we had the time to make more things and also to tackle more features. And yeah, I don't expect the next one to have big changes regarding the user-facing behaviors or new features and so on. But yeah, we still have a lot of things to tackle. And we have a name. Next one will be Better Call Saul. Great one. Okay, guys. Anything else you'd like to discuss? That's pretty much all.
That's all on my side. Oh, so the next steps is we are going to wait for the test plan. There are 1 or 2 extra things to evaluate and try to fix on this sprint. And after that, I'll start working on the release notes and packaging process. So expect, and the one big difference on this release is that we are going to push Python 3 packages to pip. So expect those packages later today, maybe early tomorrow. We'll see the announcement on the mailing list as always.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's it. I'm ending the transmission right now. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.